So you're here because you want your computer to look like this. Or maybe not, maybe you're just curious as to how it's made. Either way, today I'll be showing you how it's done. Well, one of the ways. I'm not qualified to sit here and give you some electricity lessons, so this is specific to one monitor, the Dell UltraSharp 1905 FP. You can theoretically use any old LCD panel, so this video might still come in handy if you're doing a different panel. I've used this one before and it only uses 5 volts. That way I can use a Molex cable to power it. As a heads up, this project will require soldering. I'll leave a list of tools in the description. One thing that's recommended is some high density LEDs. They usually are 12 volts, which in our case works in our favor since once again we'll be using a Molex cable. The LCD panel will be connected to the 5 volt and ground side, and the LED strip will be connected to the other side being 12 volt and ground. Another common method is to get a panel that can be powered through USB. These can be more commonly sourced from portable DVD screens. Before pulling the trim off, make sure the button panel is out. It's pretty fragile and you're going to want it later. After taking out the back panel, you should take out pretty much every single screw you can see. Right now you're about to see me touch the power board. I highly recommend against this, especially if you tested your monitor right before this. Those capacitors can pack a punch. I thought I had gotten all the screws out, but I had forgotten about these display nuts. Once again, be extra careful with these ribbon cables as they are really fragile. I pried off the rest of the aluminum casing with a flathead screwdriver. Now you'll end up with just the LCD panel. Next step is to take the polarizer film off. Since this screen is a dust magnet, I put some microfiber towels down. The side with the polarizer on usually has less glare. You'll want to leave that specific part soaking for at least 2 hours. The longer you leave it soaking, the easier it will be to peel off the polarizer film. Personally, I got impatient after the 1.5 hour mark and I should have waited longer. It should peel off pretty easily. If you struggle at all, you'll know you have to leave it soaking for longer. Like I said, I don't recommend rushing through this because then you'll leave little pieces of polarizer left on your screen. I used the Molex cable that came with my power supply for this project. Now time for wiring. Most monitors of this model are pretty much very similar. This PCB is a huge time saver since it comes very detailed. That way you don't have to pull out your multimeter to figure out which is what. All we need to power this is the 3 ground and the 3 5 volt. The rest can just be ignored. Here you can see that I folded over the 4 wires that don't matter, and the 2 sets of 3. As you saw the back of the PCB, the 3 furthest to the edge are the 5 volt and the 3 middle ones are the ground. I heat shrink the ones that don't matter and just gonna fold it into itself. First, I'll solder the 5 volt Molex cable to the 3 small wires on the PCB that are also 5 volts. Like I said, I'm not exactly qualified to be doing all this, so if you're following along, good luck. Then I'll solder the ground from the Molex cable to the ground on the PCB. In this case, it's these 3 small wires. Up next is hooking up the LED strip. The more LEDs you use, the better. This isn't a tutorial on how to wire LEDs, so I'll link a good one below. As a heads up, the brighter the inside of your PC case is, the better the graphics on the screen will show. A lot of people use white cases, but if you don't, you can easily spray paint and even spray paint your motherboard. I think they use Plasti Dip, but either way there's a risk no matter what. I'm soldering together the positive and the ground from the LED strip to the Molex cable. And now the wiring is done. I plan on making a 3D printed enclosure for this in the future, but I'll just use electrical tape for now. I guess this isn't needed and it's just me being extra, but I want to be precautious. Before I fully install it into my computer, I'm going to check that it fully works. So far everything's in perfect working order. It's a good idea to check that you're mounting it facing the right way. Yes, it's possible to flip and rotate in software, but that will only work to a certain extent if it's reverse mounted. Now make sure your panels are completely dust free. When mounting, you can use some of this double-sided tape. This one's rated for 50 pounds and is honestly way too strong, to the point where you have to pretty much break off the panel. Now here you'll see me wrap the PCB in some electrical tape. I mostly did this to hide it since it will be very visible inside of the build. If you're doing the same thing as me, please be careful. The ribbon cables, especially on the display, are insanely fragile. The adhesive from some cheap electrical tape is enough to rip them out. Don't ask me how I know. But seriously, one wrong move and you'll hear the crunch of death. You'll fuck up rows of pixels and worse yet, the whole entire panel. At first I'm just testing it with the board thrown in there. And I've never done it on this case, so I wasn't sure exactly how I wanted to set it up. For a cleaner look, I ended up having to mount it outside of the case. I personally don't think it fit this case too well, but if I were to keep it, I would have just put in more LEDs. And no shade to the Y70, I really like this case. This is what your final product should look like. I don't have many white parts, but I compensated by using a shit ton of LEDs. Don't forget to subscribe, and thanks for watching.